In Cantonese, I remember learning all the different words for family members. Like, oh my goodness.
Hi, Veronica. Welcome so much for joining our podcast again today to talk about Cantonese. So it's not often that we know people who speak Cantonese in Hong Kong. That's not a Hong Kong person. Like, I know these people exist, but I think it's really cool because I've heard it's a really hard language. So because it's my mother tongue, like, I don't know how hard it is until I have friends who try to learn Cantonese and they tell me about it. What made you want to learn Cantonese? And how long were you in Hong Kong for?
I'll start by saying my Cantonese is not fluent. I would say I got to the level just past, you have the beginner phrases that you learn, and I would say I'm now beyond that of, putting sentences and having basic communication, but still a dream to become properly fluent. But for why, I would say, actually, there's more reasons I would say why not. Coming from Canada, we expect that people coming over must learn English or French. And so for me, coming to a different place, I felt I must learn at least a little bit. As a first reason is just, if I'm going to be here, I really want to learn as much as I can and integrate with the culture and society here. Beyond that, Cantonese is a very fun and interesting language, and any language, I think, shapes how people understand and interact with their world. And so by learning even just some basics of how sentences are structured, the types of vocabulary, how emphasis is given, I think helps to understand the people you're sharing a city with and getting to know them. So kind of a mix of believing that that's how I wanted to live in the city that I was in, learn the language as much as I could. And also then it became a love of the language because it is difficult, but it's so fun and so interesting. And it was totally new to try and learn a tonal language. And so just a very great experience to be in a place where you can learn a new language and have the opportunity to challenge in that way.
Yeah, I'm really curious because you said that, and I agree, learning a language helps you understand the people more. And it was really interesting. What did you learn in Cantonese that helped you understand us more?
I think in a way, one example would just be how people will be quite efficient in how they speak of home hoi, can or cannot do something, then actually you hear this in English as well, that people will say can or cannot. And so by understanding that this is actually, I think, I'm not a linguist, but I think it's coming from the Cantonese, can we do this? It's the kind of that translation into English of what's being said in Cantonese helps to understand, okay, it's not because they're trying to be short and just say can, and then that's the end of the conversation. It's because in Cantonese, that is the way that you might answer the question is hoi, you can do that. So while in English we might have a longer, oh yeah, that sounds good, let's do it, just hoi. So then when somebody says can, it makes more sense when you understand that that's kind of the language perception on it. Yeah,
that's true. Just to add my tidbit into that, I remember when I was teaching English in China, mainland China, our students were mixing up the he and she a lot, and we couldn't understand that for a bit. And then afterwards, it's oh yeah, because in Chinese, ta is the same sound, so there's the distinguishment isn't there when in speaking.
I'm glad you said that, because even in Cantonese, kui, there isn't the same degree of emphasis on the pronouns. And so, yeah, definitely in the classroom, understanding where those pitfalls will be.
Yeah. Do you have any other interesting tidbits?
There's been so many that I've come across of mistakes that I've made. I would say definitely with the tones. I used to walk around and just be repeating to myself, ma, ma, ma. Ma, 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 and just kind of singing it to try and hear what the difference was. So I don't know how much that's an interesting tidbit, but more just realizing how those slight nuances are going to make a difference in what the language means. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really true. So Cantonese, I don't know if I'm biased, but it's a very hard language to learn, I think, because it has a lot of tones and it hasn't necessarily been systematically taught because the writing form is a slang as well. So it's not like we normally write the way we speak, even though now there are comic books or, like cartoon strips that do that, but that's not like normal written language. Like we write formally, but then we speak completely differently. How did you learn Cantonese?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I will say, not because I wasn't trying to learn written Chinese at the same time, because that felt like two big tasks. And I did struggle with that, because other languages I speak, reading has been such a fundamental part of how I've learned the language. And so definitely not having that same kind of written, you can't just go home and read a kid's book to the same extent. So I think for me, first of all, I did sign up. There is a few language schools and language options in Hong Kong for learning. And so I would say for about 2 years, I was going to classes every Tuesday, Thursday. So I admire people who can fully learn at home, but I need the commitment of showing up to class. So that was the first thing. The next thing, I guess, would be really setting challenges for myself in the city. So I remember one of the first things a friend told me, I think it's a common way a lot of people start, is at the restaurant. I was so impressed because he ordered and said 离個. And so it's like, okay, we learned 離個. But then it was like, okay, what's the next level beyond that I can push myself? So, okay, what if I order my drink in Cantonese? So like, 魚飲可樂. Then, okay, I can have my Coke. But then actually, I prefer to have Coke without ice. So adding the 找冰 was like, okay, now I have a whole phrase that 魚飲可樂找冰唔該. Like now it's flowing and it's just a simple thing, but setting that kind of next level of challenge for myself. So I have a few examples of those challenges if you want to hear them.
Yes, please.
So the 可樂找冰 in the restaurant would be one. The other one in the restaurant would be, I really, really like Sun Lat Mai Sin. And so I knew I'd be eating at these Mai Sin restaurants all the time. And so with the noodles and then choosing my different toppings. And so as a way to learn the vocabulary, I would look up one type of topping you can get in the soup. And I knew my order is going to stay the same. I always get Sun Lat Tong, Zhong Lat. But the things I add as the toppings would change. So maybe one time it's san choy, the next time it's donggu, and the next time it's gayik. And so it was these little challenges that if my bowl of soup came back and I had the ingredient I expected, then I knew my pronunciation was okay. Yeah. Sometimes I did not have the ingredient I expected, and a colleague or someone who spoke Canto would say, oh, it's actually your tone, or it was kind of unclear the way you said it. So it was that immediate feedback to then improve my vocabulary the next time. So that was like in the restaurant setting. And then I think as well, just reflecting on what kind of phrases are obvious or understandable around Hong Kong. So as a newcomer to Hong Kong, I'd be in a lot of places that I want to take pictures and I want to ask somebody's help to take a picture for me. So knowing that, oh, can you take my picture? That's a phrase I'm going to say a lot. And so, that type of challenge I really like, because it's very obvious already that if I take out my phone, it's open to the camera and I'm handing it to someone, even without language, they probably know what I want. But it would just be a way to say like, 你可唔可以幫手影相? And, then I would be playing with it. Okay, I don't actually know the most correct, phrasing of that. Is it, 可唔可以幫手幫我哋? Like, do I even need to say that, or do I just say 影相? But realizing like, okay, the verb for taking a picture is 影相. So when you break it down, all of that was practicing having that fluency, but in a pretty low stakes environment, because again, they already know what I want. I have my phone out, the camera's there, it's obvious. So even if they don't get it, I'll still get the good result. And it just gives me those moments to test it and try.
And I think as a local, I love it when someone tries to speak my local language or like my heart language, because it's like, it shows like this form of almost respect and connection. Like someone's trying to connect with you. They're not just a tourist here. So I think it's like really nice, even if the tones are off or whatever, like it's by someone saying it, it's like, oh, and I think it just makes me more willing to do it.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you say that. And I will say, I think some of this is the privilege that people don't expect me to speak Cantonese. So maybe somebody else, if they look away that somebody would expect them to speak Canto, they won't have that. But because people don't expect me to speak, then usually, as you said, that connection, more times than not, the person will be surprised and say, 네, 할빈도야나, and then it starts a conversation. And because they're interested, then they're asking more questions, then that would open up more chance for me to practice my conversation. And usually it would go until they got to a question that I did not understand. And then I'd say, Mamandi, like let's go back a step. I need to practice some more. But at least it would open up that connection rather than just handing someone a camera and say, please. Then the communication stopped. So opening up that then they'd be curious about me, then I could ask them questions back and have those kind of real life situations to practice.
Yeah, I think like our company like talks about the communicative approach so much, and I personally also experienced that too. Like it's my biggest motivator to learn a language when you can communicate with someone and exchange meaning, and like what you were sharing in terms of it's like practical connection every day, and then you like want to learn more, and your brain almost helps absorb it better because you're like, hey, I can then communicate, I can talk to someone, and this is what it means, rather than, at least for me, my experience is rather than like memorizing from a textbook and my brain just goes, zoop, 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 when am I gonna use it? But then it's like, I'm gonna use it now, I'm gonna practice it again the next day. It's like so practical and helpful. Yeah.
And I think as well, one trick I learned is you don't always, if it's in these situations that have a very consistent flow, you don't always need to understand everything. So at the wet market, like that would be a next step that, you know, people would say, "ligo, ligo, ligo." But then the next step of saying, "ligo geitina," honestly, a lot of the time I didn't understand the answer because they would say it in a shorthand of like sa man, and I would be there like sa is ya sa like in my head. And so finally I was like, actually it doesn't matter. I'll have a 100 ready. I'll trust they'll give me the change, so I can just think afterwards as I walk away, sa man, sa man, how much were they saying, and reflect on it. But actually the interaction, you don't always need to have, you know, you don't need to be caught up in having the perfect understanding of everything if you can just have that first step.
Yeah, and the context already kind of gives you enough information to continue without knowing every single word. Yeah, but that's a nice trick. I think I do that too when I travel. It's like, okay, yeah, don't really know what you just said.
I know it should be roughly this amount. And I've shown that like I'm asking a question, so don't just tell me any price. I know something, but
that's nice. So you gave us like several tips of how you learn. I heard that you have a few more.
Oh yes, I did also spend some time learning Cantonese rap songs. And
that's an interesting way.
That sounds like the lead into doing them right now. That's maybe for me at home. But definitely with a communicative approach, listening to things helps so much. And I took kind of maybe it's an intense or silly approach to this, but on YouTube, you can slow videos down to half speed. And so it was kind of a challenge for building my fluency, because you always feel that people in another language speak so quickly. I think that's universal on any language you speak. It sounds so fast, people shorten words, you're trying to catch up. And so I slowed down the YouTube rap songs to about half speed, and then I would challenge myself to say it. And then I would go up to 0.75, and then I'd go up to 1 times speed, and then I would push it to 1.25 speed to be even faster, and then reduce back.
I can even do that with the rap song. Go at 1.25 speed.
Just at home alone, you know, when there's a typhoon outside and nothing to do inside, then just practice them.
But seriously, that's such a great idea, because first, like, that has your tones down already without needing to think about all the tones, because it's like melodious in a sense. Yeah, and then it's like a tongue twister at the same time, and then it sounds cool. So why not? That's a great tip.
Yes, I love tongue twisters as well. I saw the channel has the Yamanya, it's like guy, Yamanya, it's like why. Yes, I spent a lot of time practicing that one as well.
Thank you for being our fan. So, okay, you do the communicative approach, you find practical phrases, you talk to people, you do rap songs. How else do you learn? You took lessons. That's a lot. That's very comprehensive already. But I think I remember when we were chatting, like you do so much, like different ways to help yourself learn.
Yeah, I mean, because not everyone is going to work for you in every situation. I think there's that bit of confidence or courage of just saying, even if it's not perfect, I'm just going to try. And I would definitely help a lot of colleagues as well. That was one thing I did for a little bit. We set up a language exchange with a colleague in the office that we would finish our work day maybe 30 minutes early and we would stay 30 minutes late. And we set it as a structure. We did 30 minutes in English and then 30 minutes in Cantonese. And just saying we're going to commit to not speaking the other language for that time really forced having somebody willing to be patient and kind of listen and work through what you're trying to express.
Yeah. I like that. I did that in university too, having a language partner, because it's like building a connection again, like back to like communicating, but also helping each other out. And yeah, that's really helpful. And it's also an exchange, so it's not like one-sided. You're like each sharing what you know well, and yeah, that's really fun. When you have some parts of language, I remember trying to do a French language exchange before, and I like begged for mercy after like the first 10 minutes. I'm like, can we just go slowly? I can help you now.
Yeah, but that's part of it too. You have to stick to the 30-minute. You have to get past, because there's so much emotion with learning a new language. You have to get past that. Say we've committed to this. Even if we're going to sit in awkward, I remember she was so patient, the colleague doing this with me, sit in awkward silence. So I was like, just the wheels are turning, trying to, think back to what the word is and try. But there's a lot of fun with it too. Like in Cantonese, I remember learning all the different words for family members. Like, oh my goodness. That depending if it's my older brother or my younger brother or my mom's uncle or, just absolutely very fun to get lost in these things.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. When I came back from the States to Hong Kong, when I was a kid, I remember needing to learn all that. I was confused. And then I met all my relatives. And yeah, in English it's like auntie, uncle, but in Chinese it's, yeah.
I heard at some point actually somebody created an app that you could plug in. Did you hear about this?
Yes.
You could plug in like mom's side, older, plus, all this
But
equals.
There's too many.
So I definitely would say I'm not at the level of remembering all that vocabulary. And now living back in Canada, it's definitely regressed a little bit. But I think more and more there's online podcasts, there's resources, YouTube, that trying to stay connected with the language that way.
Nice. Yeah, and I guess there's a lot of friends you can have too in Canada who's Chinese who'd like gladly help you. Yeah.
Mostly if they're from Hong Kong, we end up just talking about the food we miss in Hong Kong.
Tell me a bit about that. So now you're visiting Hong Kong for 2 weeks, and what do you love about Hong Kong, or what do you miss about Hong Kong?
So much. Well, this is not my scene, like I mentioned before. But definitely in Hong Kong, there's so much to do. I was thinking about how many people come here thinking it will be 3 months, 6 months, and end up staying 3 years, 5 years. I think because there's this feeling that there's always more you can do and learn and explore. Like I found a love of hiking, and there's still so many more hikes I could do. So I'm here for 2 weeks and I've crammed in 4 or 5 hikes.
Wow.
And I still wish I had more time for others. And then the food, I can say that I really became a foodie in Hong Kong. Before, maybe I said I like dumplings. Now, if a friend recommends a dumpling place, I'm asking, but how is the dumpling wrapper? Is it fresh or is it a frozen one? What do they have inside? Really at this level of, soup noodle places. Are the noodles chewy? How's the soup broth? So much to eat, so much to hike and see. It's a great place for traveling other places in Asia if you want to explore. And being in Hong Kong specifically, here there is, and kind of connected to language, there's so much humor and really clever, creative, like changing the language to mean a different thing, or like puns in Cantonese. And I mean, I'm not in the place to say what all of those are, but I felt like every week someone was saying, oh yeah, explaining that this is funny because it's the 2 words sound the same, but it's slightly different, or the Chinese character looks similar. And so there's all this creativity happening here, and, art galleries and shows in Sham Shui Po or in Fotan in the industrial. There was like an open day that you could go and see what the artists were up to. And so much culture that's being created by Hong Kongers that it feels here that there is just endless things to explore and learn more and be a part of the city.
Well, thanks for sharing that. That makes my heart happy. Yeah. And thanks for taking time away from eating more food and going to art galleries to be with us today. So if you want to see more of Veronica and like what we've experienced in Hong Kong and Cantonese culture, don't forget to watch our shorts. See you in the next video. Bye.